It's 11:14 on a Sunday night. You're lying in bed, lights off, house quiet. And you're doing the math again. Not because anything went wrong. Nothing went wrong. Nobody got fired. The car didn't die. The roof didn't leak. No emergency room visit. No disaster. And somehow, that makes it worse. Because when something breaks, fear has a shape. This doesn't. This is the quieter version, the chronic version. The version where life looks fine from the outside, but your brain is still running numbers in the dark. Mortgage, car payment, groceries, insurance, utilities, phone bill, student loan. The credit card balance that never becomes an emergency, so it never fully disappears. The repair bill you're pretending can wait because this month has no room for one more thing. You already know the answer. This is not the month you get ahead. This is the month you survive. And survival is not the same thing as progress. That's the part nobody says out loud. Adult life can look successful and still feel financially claustrophobic. You have a house, a job, maybe 2 incomes, maybe retirement contributions. You still go to birthdays. You still buy decent groceries. You still look normal. But every month feels like a controlled fall. Meanwhile, your neighbor, same street, similar house, bought around the same time, woke up last Wednesday and decided to take 4 days off. No panic, no family budget meeting, no whispered conversation at the kitchen counter. He just didn't feel like working, so he didn't. And the part that bothers you is this. He's not obviously richer than you. He just crossed a line you haven't crossed yet. He stopped feeding the biggest bill in his life. That's what this is really about. Not the soft focus version of paying off your house. Not the version where everything becomes sunlight, coffee, and peace. The real version. What actually happens to your money, your stress, your work, your time, and your decisions when the mortgage finally disappears? Because nobody tells you this when you're 10 or 12 years into a 30-year loan. When the mortgage ends, you do not just lose a bill. You lose an obligation that has been quietly shaping almost every major decision in your life. Let's start with the math. Because this gets sentimental fast if you don't lock it down with numbers. Imagine a family buys a home with a large 30-year mortgage. The monthly principal and interest payment is already painful. But that number is never the real number. Taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs. Those keep the real cost of housing much higher than the number people like to quote. Now put that next to a normal dual-income household. It sounds decent on paper. It even looks decent from the outside. But once nearly half of take-home pay disappears into housing at the beginning of every month, the rest of life gets squeezed into a very small box. Meet Daniel and Emily. Their combined income is solid. After taxes, insurance, mandatory deductions, and a small amount set aside for retirement, they bring home about $2,050 a month. Their real housing cost is around $945. That leaves $1,105. 2 car payments and transportation take $355. Food for the family takes $315. Electricity, water, internet, and phones take $140. School and child-related costs take $160. Medicine, checkups, family obligations, and the random expenses that never fully disappear take another $100. That leaves about $35. Not $435. Not a cushion. About $35. And that's in a month where nobody gets seriously sick. No wedding out of town. No tires need replacing. No washing machine dies. No family emergency shows up. And neither of them wakes up on a Monday morning saying, "I can't do this job anymore." That matters. Because Daniel and Emily are not irresponsible. They are not reckless. They are not blowing money on nonsense just to impress people. They are doing what millions of families do. Earning respectable income, behaving reasonably, and still feeling financially compressed every single month. And almost every major decision in their lives has to pass through one silent question. If we do this, can we still carry the house? That question is the real cost of the mortgage. It doesn't just take your money, it shrinks the width of your life. It turns work into more than work. It turns it into oxygen. It makes leaving a bad job more dangerous than it should be. It makes rest sound irresponsible. It makes changing careers sound reckless. It makes starting a business sound insane. It makes moving closer to family feel impossible. It makes breathing room feel like a luxury. And this is where people get it wrong in both directions. Some people underestimate what paying off a house does. They act like it's just an emotional milestone. Other people overestimate it. They imagine the entire monthly housing cost instantly becomes free cash. Both are wrong. When the mortgage disappears, housing cost does not go to zero. Property taxes remain, insurance remains, maintenance remains. The roof does not care whether the bank is gone. Neither does the air conditioner. Neither do the pipes. What disappears is not the whole cost of housing. What disappears is the biggest and most rigid part of it. Go back to Daniel and Emily. If principal and interest make up about $670 of their $945 monthly housing cost, then the day the loan ends, what gets freed up is not $945. It's about $670 a month. That is the number that matters. $670 a month is about $8,040 a year. If they invest that amount consistently into a broad index fund earning around 8% a year over the long run, the results get serious very quickly. After 5 years, they could have around $49,000. After 10 years, around $122,000. After 15 years, around $232,000. After 20 years, around $393,000. And the important part is not just the total. It's when the growth starts doing more work than they are. At some point, the market begins adding more than they do. That is the moment the story stops being about paying off debt and starts becoming about building real wealth. That is the part nobody highlights when you sign 30-year mortgage paperwork. The mortgage is not just helping you buy a house. It is delaying the moment a major stream of cash can finally start working for you instead of against you. Now, here comes the objection. If your mortgage rate is low enough, shouldn't you invest instead of paying it off early? In theory, yes, sometimes. If your mortgage costs 4% and your long-term investments might earn 8%, the spreadsheet says invest. The problem is that real life is not a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet assumes you actually invest the difference every month for years. It assumes you won't quietly turn that extra money into better dinners, a nicer car, more trips, more convenience, and 50 tiny upgrades that each feel harmless until they become your permanent lifestyle. It assumes you can watch your portfolio fall by 30% or 40% and remain calm while the mortgage is still hanging over your head every month. It assumes your job is stable, your marriage is stable, your health is stable, your nervous system is stable. It assumes you behave like software. Human beings don't. Some people really do have low-rate mortgages, invest consistently, and handle volatility just fine. For them, investing instead of prepaying may be the right move. But there are also millions of people for whom lowering the cost of survival every month creates so much psychological relief that they begin making better decisions everywhere else in life. So the true answer is not always prepay or always invest. The true answer is know yourself. Know your risk tolerance. Know your habits. Know whether the bigger pressure in your life is the interest rate or the mental weight. Because this is not just a math problem. It is a nervous system problem. Debt is not just expensive. Debt is noisy. It occupies mental bandwidth. It keeps tabs open in your head, even when you're trying to rest. It reduces your ability to handle uncertainty because you know that if income slips even a little, the whole structure shakes. There is a massive difference between I have living expenses and I have mandatory obligations that punish me every month if my income drops. That second condition changes people. It makes them more cautious, more reactive, more short-term, more tired, more willing to accept things they should not accept. You stay in jobs that are draining you. You tolerate bad managers longer than you should. You postpone recovery. You stop imagining far into the future. You call that maturity. Sometimes it's just compression. Sometimes it's just what a heavy cost structure does to a human nervous system. That is why so many people misunderstand what changes first after the mortgage is gone. It is not always wealth. Sometimes it's quiet. Fewer 3 a.m. wake-ups. Less irrational anger over small bills. Less sense that one tiny mistake will wreck the month. Less bargaining with yourself every time you think about living differently. That may sound soft. It isn't. It's mechanical. When mandatory costs drop, the threat level your brain feels drops too. And when threat drops, decision quality often rises. Better decisions compound too. If you want the clearest way to understand what a mortgage really is, think of it like a 30-year employment contract in disguise. Not legally, practically. When your family needs a large, fixed amount every month just to stay on the rails, work stops being just a source of income. It becomes the thing keeping the entire structure alive. And that gives work too much power. Imagine two families with identical incomes. Family A needs $2,050 a month to keep everything functioning. Family B only needs $1,380 because the mortgage is gone. Those two families are not equally free. Family A needs continuity. It needs steady payroll. It needs benefits. It needs to avoid long stretches of uncertainty. One spouse cannot leave easily. A business idea has to make money fast. An income shock turns into panic almost immediately. Family B still needs money, obviously, but the lower requirement opens options everywhere. A few months of unemployment becomes survivable. One spouse can experiment with freelancing. One can reduce hours. The family can choose a kinder job over a higher-paying one. Same people, completely different Monday mornings when the biggest bill is no longer holding a knife to the future. This is also why paying off a mortgage has such a powerful effect on financial independence. One common rule says you need about 25 times your annual spending to reach basic financial freedom. If your household spends about $37,800 a year, your rough number is $945,000. But if paying off the house removes $8,040 in mandatory annual expense, your spending drops to around $29,760, and your financial independence number falls to about $744,000. That is a difference of more than $200,000 just because one giant payment disappeared. Same city, same food, same people, same life in many ways, but the finish line for freedom moves dramatically closer. That's the double effect people miss You now have more money to invest, and you need less money invested to be free. Your speed increases while the finish line moves closer. Very few financial changes hit that hard in two directions at once. Now, to be fair, a paid-off house is not a free house. It still costs money. Property taxes can rise. Insurance can rise. Maintenance never asks permission. Even when the bank is gone, the house will keep asking for money in ordinary, boring, persistent ways. But the structure is softer now. One bad month no longer threatens the whole year. One weak business quarter no longer instantly becomes a family crisis. A decision to rest for a few weeks no longer sounds like financial self-destruction. The house is not free. Your life is just less locked down. And that is what people are really hungry for. Not luxury. Margin. And margin matters even more if it arrives early, because the age at which you pay off your mortgage matters more than most people realize. Buy a house at 35 with a 30-year loan, and you're done at 65. Buy at 38, and you're done at 68. Refinance a couple times. Reset the clock without noticing. Suddenly, you are dragging housing debt deep into the stage of life that was supposed to slow down. That doesn't make paying it off later meaningless. It still matters. But it is not the same as paying it off at 52 or 55. At 52, you still have healthy, energetic, usable years left to do something with that freedom. You still have time to invest hard, change work, build something, spend more time with your kids, repair your health. Rest while rest still restores you instead of just extending your endurance. That is why paying the mortgage off 5 or 8 years early is not just about saving interest. It is about buying back years with a completely different quality of life. So, how do people actually do that? Usually in boring ways. Add extra principal steadily. Use part of bonuses to attack the loan instead of attacking your boredom with new spending. Break payments up so you effectively make one extra payment a year. Stop lifestyle inflation the second income rises, not through heroic gestures, through repetition, through unglamorous choices that quietly change everything. A large mortgage with a small extra payment added early can cut years off the timeline. A bonus applied directly to principal year after year can eliminate huge amounts of interest and, more importantly, cut years of living under the dominance of that bill. In other words, you are not just saving money, you are buying back your adult life. Then one day, the number hits 0. You log in, and the mortgage is gone. What do you do? First, the boring stuff. Confirm the lien release. Confirm clean ownership. Confirm the paperwork is properly recorded. Then, do not immediately turn the new breathing room into more spending. Many people have been house poor for so long that their emergency fund is thin, repairs have been delayed, and the household is more fragile than it looks. If your new baseline spending is $1,380 a month, then 6 months of reserves is about $8,280, and 12 months is about $16,560. That is not pessimism. That is foundation. After that comes redeploying the old cash flow. If you just freed up $670 a month, decide where it goes before lifestyle decides for you. Part into long-term investing. Part into cash reserves. Part into home maintenance. Part into improving quality of life on purpose. The exact percentages matter less than the intention. What matters is understanding that this is a capital reallocation event, not just a temporary feeling of relief. Because many people accidentally melt a major financial turning point into slightly nicer habits, and a few years later realize the freedom leaked away. So here is the real point. The mortgage is not just a big bill, it is a force. It participates in your career decisions, your resilience, your sleep, your marriage, your imagination. And when it disappears, what changes is not only your budget. What changes is your right to choose, without asking permission from a giant monthly obligation standing behind you. You walk into work differently. You face risk differently. You handle setbacks differently. You are not necessarily rich overnight. You are just less cornered. And people who are less cornered live very differently. They negotiate differently. They say no more cleanly. They tolerate less nonsense. They think farther ahead. So, if you're lying in the dark on a Sunday night doing the math again, remember this. The people who stop doing that math earliest are not always the ones who earn the most. Very often, they are just the ones who understood how much that finish line was really worth and moved toward it on purpose. Because the final payment does not just end a debt. It opens a different version of your life.